Episode 62, Suppressing Emotional Triggers.
You're listening to the very best podcast in the world on health, wealth, and happiness. Please remember to leave a review and share with all your friends and family. And here is your host, Lars Hilser.
Boy, ain't it exciting. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the very best podcast in the world, Personal Supremacy Through Health, Wealth, and Happiness. And more often than not, our happiness is clouded by some asshole who, has this negative mission in life to ruin everyone else's life. And it's not like they're being an energy vampire about it. In fact, the energy that they suck from positive people even continues to infuriate and inflame their deviousness and their negativity and this fire of rage of being, an asshole, to put it short. And, I had my run-ins with quite a few of those, and the most interesting one being a chief executive that was hired, basically to save the company. But in fact, he was so preoccupied and full of himself that he, led the company into further disarray. A very interesting character. I already mentioned him once. If you have a 55-year-old with a 25-year-old Asian girlfriend, you know where that's going. However, it's I noticed in myself and through the, increased awareness that I had to a lot of situations, that pretty much everyone has their set of emotional triggers that can be pushed. And there are some people that have their joyous joy finding out what these buttons are and pressing them. Now, you can't do anything about that, period. You're going to have those jerk-offs who feed off of that kind of shit, provoking people into overreactions or, that kind of ordeal. So if you're on the receiving side of an energy vampire, of a negative person like that, it's about you to kind of take away access to those buttons. And I know this sounds very robotic and metaphysical, but at the end of the day, you can, the emotional reactions that these people try to get out of you are really, they're very good at it. So, and the problem is, on your end, we have to differentiate a bit more between them and you. The thing on your end is really that that these emotional triggers or these emotional reactions get triggered a lot of times in your unconscious mind. And that from there, it is not you have no defense or less defense mechanisms in your unconscious or subconscious mind. And when the buttons are pushed there, the reaction that happens also a lot of times in the unconscious mind is your rage against this person. So, first of all, we're going to have to become aware of these emotional reactions that which you experience. So it's about taking them into the awareness paradigm, which requires you to have a state of alert attention really throughout the day, and particularly if you know that you're going to be around one of these assholes who's going to try to push your buttons. And once we have achieved that over a longer period of time, being aware of our reactions, it's not going to happen immediately. It will be a process. So you're going to go from a reaction you have to a trigger, and it takes you a day or two to reflect upon it. And we need to shorten this period of time down to almost immediately. And then we are at a state where we can start working to prevent the reaction in the first place. Now, when you're present, you're not aware of the unconscious mind, but you are present. And that's kind of like the point where you have to pick up on your reaction and then just try to really get ahead of it. Somebody pushes the button, your unconscious reacts, and this bridge between the unconscious and the conscious mind, this fuse needs to be so short that you can extinguish it before you actually react to this trigger being pushed on you. Now, once this time period, this kind of defusing period, which I just mentioned, between your subconscious, your unconscious mind, and your conscious mind is reduced so much, then we can actually start working and reverting or killing the reaction you're going to have in its track. One of these things to practice, this is, of course, not in your office setting where you have your boss, perhaps, that wants to get the best of you in a meeting by pushing your buttons and triggering a reaction. It needs to be in a more controlled environment. And that's something for you to determine for yourself. And then to actually practice in this controlled environment, and only then will you see results by shortening the time between, button press and reaction. You will shorten this time in a controlled environment, and then you will see the progress you make in real environments, like I mentioned, with the boss, for instance, or, a coworker that wants to loves mobbing you or whatever. It's about kind of getting a feeling of go fuck yourself rather than emotionally exploding. And if you're in that situation and you want to get back to an aware state in your conscious mind, a very good thing is to practice focus on an object. For instance, I don't know, look at a flower forever, and then whatever, look at a flower, study it, look at it for a minute or 5 minutes without distracting yourself from, or being able to be distracted, by your surrounding. And when you invest a lot of focus into this flower, you're going to notice that the awareness that you get and that the ability to focus on something is actually magnificent. And thereby you're going to take yourself out of the situation that you were about to react to. And that is another practicing element that you can do, because you're going into a state of reflection. And this is the type of reflection that you're going to need to avoid your emotional reaction to your triggers being pushed. You can expand this further by not only visually looking at the flower, but, take into account, for instance, its smell. The smell of a flower is often, kind of like, yeah, it's there, but it's, not something that you pay a lot of attention to. But do, in this case, pay attention to that flower, to the smell of that flower. If you are in nature or somewhere, then gradually start taking in the sound of the situation that you're in, but don't necessarily connect it to anything else but to this flower. It's kind of like a meditative environment that we're going to try to create. And through this process of actually shortening the fuse and doing so by getting into this reflective process, you can take a lot of these situations out of your life, these reactions to emotional triggers. And this was a quick, brief lesson on how to suppress them. In that sense, have a successful day. Don't let assholes be assholes to you, the plural, I think, in both cases. And have a successful day. It's shortly before Christmas. Take the time to kind of look back on this insane, silly year, and see if all of the things that you're going to change next year. And if you've had your successful day already, well, have a good night. And I'll be hearing you tomorrow with an episode about invisibility. Stay tuned. Peace out.